Are you waking up tired even after a full night's sleep, feeling that quiet loss of drive, that subtle worry in the back of your mind, wondering if this is just what aging feels like now? I hear that fear more often than you think. I'm a board-certified urologist, and for decades I've worked with men over 50, listening to these exact concerns and helping them make sense of what their bodies are telling them. And here's what most men don't realize. There's a simple 3-minute action you can do every morning that many dismiss, yet it can change far more than you expect. Tell me where you're watching from, and if this resonates, like and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. But here's what most people don't realize. Long before blood tests ever change, your body starts sending quiet signals that something is shifting. I hear this every single day in my clinic. Men tell me, "Doctor, my labs say I'm normal, but I don't feel like myself anymore." And that confusion creates shame. It makes you wonder if it's in your head, or worse, if you've somehow failed your body. Let me be very clear with you right now. This is not a personal failure. What you're experiencing is functional change, not weakness, and it follows patterns I've seen for decades. After 60, male potency doesn't usually disappear overnight. It fades subtly. Morning energy isn't what it used to be. You wake up feeling heavy instead of refreshed. Desire feels muted, not gone, just quieter. Erections may still happen, but they don't feel as reliable, especially in the morning. And here's the key point most men miss. These changes often show up years before standard lab numbers fall outside the normal range. Blood tests are snapshots. Your lived experience is a movie, and movies tell the truth sooner. One of the biggest drivers here is morning physiology. Healthy male function depends on a precise choreography between blood flow, nerve signaling, and hormones, especially in the early hours of the day. Morning erections, for example, aren't about sex. They're a sign that blood vessels, nerves, and hormone rhythms are communicating properly. When those morning signals weaken, it's often the first sign that circulation and hormonal timing are drifting out of sync, even if total testosterone still looks acceptable on paper. Sleep plays a much larger role than most men realize. As we age, sleep becomes lighter and more fragmented. You may not even notice it, but your body does. Deep sleep is when testosterone is released and tissues recover. Fragmented sleep interrupts that process. Add low-grade inflammation, which increases naturally with age, and blood vessels become less responsive. They don't open as easily. Nerves don't signal as crisply. The result isn't sudden dysfunction, but gradual unreliability, and that uncertainty can quietly erode confidence. This is where the phrase normal aging does a lot of damage. Too often, it's used as a full explanation when it's really just a label. Normal aging does not mean inevitable decline without options. It means your body requires different inputs now than it did at 40. When medicine stops at "this is normal," men are left without tools. In a typical 10-minute visit, there simply isn't time to explain how sleep quality, inflammation, stress hormones, and morning routines interact to shape male potency. So men leave with reassurance, but not understanding. I want you to hear this clearly. Nothing about this makes you broken. Your body is adapting to time, and adaptation can go in either direction. When you understand the mechanics, shame falls away. You stop blaming yourself and start working with your physiology instead of against it. And that shift alone is powerful. What surprises many of my patients most is learning that pills and supplements are rarely where the story truly begins. The most meaningful signals that set the tone for male function happen before breakfast, before emails, before the day fully starts. In fact, what happens in the very first minutes after you wake up often matters more than anything you swallow later. And that's where this conversation is really headed next. Now, here's the mistake most men make when they hear about restoring potency or energy later in life. They assume it has to be complicated, expensive, physically demanding, something that requires willpower they're not sure they still have. But what I've learned over years of practice is that the body doesn't respond best to force, it responds best to timing. And the morning, especially the first few minutes after waking, is when your system is most open to change. I'm not going to fully reveal the habit just yet, but I want you to understand why it works before you ever try it. When you wake up, your nervous system is transitioning from rest to action. Your blood vessels are shifting tone. Hormones are pulsing in a natural rhythm. This is a narrow window when small inputs create outsized effects. Think of it like steering a ship. A tiny adjustment at the beginning changes the entire course, while aggressive corrections later barely make a difference. Most men believe improvement comes from effort, harder workouts, more supplements, stronger medications, but effort and effectiveness are not the same thing. The nervous system doesn't respond to strain, it responds to signals of safety, rhythm, and consistency. In the morning, your body is listening closely. It's asking one simple question: is today a threat, or is it safe to function well? How you answer that question sets the tone for circulation, hormone signaling, and energy for the rest of the day. I've seen this most clearly in older men who maintained function well into their 70s and 80s. When we looked closer, it wasn't because they trained harder or chased extreme routines. In long-term observations, the men who preserved vitality shared something much quieter, a simple, repeatable morning practice that told their nervous system day after day that the body was supported, not rushed, not stressed, just guided. I'll be honest with you, when I first encountered this concept, I was skeptical myself. Medical training teaches us to value interventions we can measure easily: pills, procedures, lab values. A 3-minute habit sounded almost too gentle to matter. But outcomes are hard to argue with. Men who adopted this kind of morning reset didn't just report better circulation, they slept deeper, their mood stabilized, confidence returned before performance ever did. And that sequence is important. This habit works because it doesn't fight the body, it cooperates with it. Instead of pushing blood flow mechanically, it restores communication between the brain, nerves, and blood vessels. Instead of stimulating hormones artificially, it improves the timing of their release. And timing, especially for testosterone, is everything. You can have normal levels and still feel depleted if the rhythm is off. What most men overlook is that the body remembers patterns far more than intensity. 3 minutes done daily beats 30 minutes done occasionally. Consistency trains the nervous system. And once the nervous system shifts, everything downstream, circulation, hormones, energy, begins to follow. In a moment, I want to show you why this simple habit doesn't just support blood flow, but actually speaks directly to testosterone signaling itself. And once you understand that connection, you'll see why mornings became the turning point for so many men I've worked with. But here's what most people don't realize about male potency. It's never just about performance. It's about identity. It's about feeling at home in your body, trusting it again, and knowing that you can show up fully, not just physically, but emotionally. When men tell me they're struggling, what they're really describing isn't vanity, it's dignity. It's the quiet desire to feel capable and confident without having to force it. This is where the morning habit begins to change things at a deeper level. When done correctly, it improves blood vessel responsiveness, the ability of your vessels to open and close smoothly in response to signals from the nervous system. Healthy erections depend on this responsiveness, not brute strength. Over time, inflammation and stress dull that response. Vessels become stiff, less cooperative. The habit gently retrains them, reminding the body how to respond again. A big part of this involves nitric oxide, a molecule you may have heard about but rarely had explained clearly. Nitric oxide is what tells blood vessels to relax and allow flow. Think of it as a messenger. When the message is strong and well-timed, circulation improves naturally. The morning routine supports this process not by forcing more nitric oxide, but by improving how effectively the message is delivered and received. That distinction matters, especially as we age. Testosterone works in a similar way. Most men focus on total testosterone numbers, but what actually determines how you feel is rhythm. Testosterone follows a daily pattern, with its most important signals occurring in the early morning. If that rhythm is disrupted by poor sleep, stress, or nervous system imbalance, you can have normal levels and still feel flat. The habit helps restore that rhythm. It doesn't spike hormones artificially, it brings them back into time. One of the most meaningful changes men report is a return of confidence before any dramatic physical change. They feel steadier, less anxious, more present, and that matters because confidence itself feeds performance. When fear fades, the nervous system stops blocking blood flow. This is why so many men notice emotional relief first. The body follows the mind when the mind feels safe again. There's a side of this conversation men rarely voice: the fear of intimacy, the quiet embarrassment when closeness feels risky instead of natural. I've had men tell me they avoid situations not because they lack desire, but because they're afraid of disappointment, theirs or their partner's. That fear tightens the nervous system and further blocks function. Breaking that cycle gently is essential. This habit works because it restores trust between your brain and your body, trust that mornings can begin calmly instead of with pressure. But there's an important caution I need to share with you. Done incorrectly, rushed, distracted, or at the wrong time, this same habit can lose much of its power. Timing and mindset matter more than effort. And in the next part, I'll explain exactly why getting that wrong can quietly cancel the benefit. Now, here's where I want to be very careful because this is often misunderstood. I am not anti-medicine. Medications have an important place, and for some men, they are absolutely necessary. But what most people don't realize is that medication works on top of physiology, not instead of it. And when the foundation is unstable, prescriptions can only do so much. In my practice, I've seen men who rely solely on medication without addressing the underlying signals their body is responding to. At first, it works. There's a sense of relief. But over time, the effect plateaus. Doses increase. Confidence becomes tied to a pill rather than to the body itself. That's not restoration, that's dependency. And for many men, that dependency quietly erodes their sense of control. Habits, when done correctly, work differently. They don't override the body, they retrain it. They restore communication between the brain, nerves, blood vessels, and hormones. This is why, in certain cases, consistent daily habits outperform prescriptions over the long term, not because they're stronger, but because they're aligned with how the body actually heals and adapts. The danger with chasing quick fixes is that it teaches the nervous system to wait for rescue instead of rebuilding capacity. Every shortcut sends a subtle message that your body can't be trusted on its own. Over time, that belief becomes self-fulfilling. Men stop listening to early signals. They react instead of respond, and the gap between how they feel and how they want to feel grows wider. What I've watched happen again and again is that when men commit to simple, consistent morning practices, something shifts. They feel involved in their recovery. They stop feeling passive. Control returns, not as pressure, but as partnership with their body. That psychological shift alone improves outcomes. The body responds differently when the mind believes it's capable again. This is why I tell my own patients to start here first, whenever it's safe to do so. Not because it replaces everything else, but because it strengthens everything else. Medication, if needed, works better. Lifestyle changes stick more easily. Progress becomes steadier instead of fragile. And here's the part I want you to hear most. Improvement doesn't require perfection. It requires patience and consistency. Small actions done daily restore far more than dramatic efforts done occasionally. And once you understand that, hope starts to feel grounded instead of distant. But here's what I want you to take in, slowly and clearly, because many men need to hear this more than once. It is not too late. And you are not broken. Aging is not a verdict against you, and it is not a punishment for something you did or didn't do. It is simply a transition your body is moving through, often without clear guidance. I've sat across from men who felt time slipping away, who believed they had missed their window, and I've watched that belief do more damage than age ever could. What I want you to understand is that decline is not the same as destiny. The body remains responsive far longer than most men are told. Recovery doesn't mean becoming who you were at 40. It means becoming strong, steady, and confident in the body you have now. I've seen meaningful improvements in men in their 70s who thought hope was off the table, not because they chased perfection, but because they took responsibility for small, repeatable actions. Masculinity is not about flawless performance. It's about responsibility. It's about listening to your body instead of ignoring it. It's about choosing consistency over frustration, patience over self-criticism. When you do that, dignity returns, confidence rebuilds quietly, and the pressure to prove anything begins to fade. You don't need to overhaul your life. You don't need extreme routines or heroic discipline. What restores identity is showing up for yourself in small ways every day. 3 minutes in the morning, a calmer start, a signal to your nervous system that you are paying attention again. Those moments accumulate. They reshape how you feel about your body and your future. And you don't have to do this alone. Men heal better when they feel guided, understood, and supported. That's why what comes next matters, not as motivation, but as a place to continue learning, grounded in respect and shared experience. If you've stayed with me to the end, I want you to know that says something important about you. It says you're paying attention. It says you still care about your health, your confidence, and the quality of your days. And that matters. What I'm building here is not hype or quick fixes, but a community of men who take responsibility for themselves with calm, steady intention. If this guidance has helped you see your body differently, I invite you to subscribe so you never miss future conversations designed specifically for men like you. You deserve confidence, real energy, and deep restorative sleep. None of that is too much to ask. It's foundational. Start tomorrow morning with those 3 minutes. Let that small habit be your signal that change is possible. Take care of your health because you are worth it, and you don't have to walk this path alone.